Life is Strange Double Exposure is a mystery story in which you play as Max Caulfield, who is working as a photographer at this university called Caledon. Firstly, it's worth mentioning that developers clarified that the game is designed to be accessible for both new and returning players. But keep in mind that while the game does give you some kind of recap, so you have a general understanding of what happened before, Double Exposure is directly tied to the first game, and playing the first game will definitely give you more background and understanding for the things that are implied or presented in Double Exposure, since Max is the main protagonist in both games, and her personality now is shaped by the events of the first game. With that said, this video may contain light early game spoilers, but I'm definitely gonna be thoughtful and careful with what I show here, and mostly limit it to things that Square Enix themselves have provided. The story basically kicks off when Max finds out her close friend Safi has been murdered. Now Max has this supernatural ability to rewind time. However, since Max hasn't used this in a long time, she actually accidentally opened a separate timeline instead. She can now shift between these two parallel timelines. In one timeline, Safi is dead, but in the other, she's very much still alive. So you are trying to prevent her murder while figuring out who the killer is. We saw this ability called Pulse that basically lets you see what's different between the timelines. We can think of it like a detective vision. You can spot people and objects from the other timeline as these ghostly echoes. Then there are specific spots called shift points. This is where we can actually jump between timelines. That's necessary to solve puzzles, find required items that only exist in the other timeline, or, most importantly, talk to different people to get more information. Speaking of people, there will be various murder suspects, and everyone has a different version of themselves in each timeline. Someone might be totally plagued by grief in one timeline, but more open to talking with you in the other timeline, where things have not happened yet, since the murderer is likely covering up his tracks, or even preparing his next murder in the dead timeline, and the murderer is still planning Safi's murder in the other timeline. You have to investigate both timelines, as they can be equally important to solve this. We have access to our phone as well, so we can evaluate and use text messages or posts on this Instagram-like platform to get more information and also more context and storytelling. The setting here is of course the winter campus of Caledon University, and they made sure to give us visual clues, so we know in which timeline we are currently in. In one timeline, for example, there is still Christmas decorations, and if you do get lost, which even Max sometimes does, then there's an option to show an indicator when you shift timelines. And lastly, there's this detective who's on Max's case, which provides us with more tension and pressure, since we are trying to solve this murder while potentially being a suspect ourselves. And that sentence concludes today's video. If your time was respected, a like or comment is very much appreciated.
Exactly why I'm here, to help everyone feel safe.